Welcome to another edition, a 2020 edition of Against the Spread, where we here at Sportsnet pick NFL games for you on YouTube against the spread. And Gilo, we're going to do our best to pick them against the spread this year because this year, unlike any other, is going to be wild in terms of what lines are like, who is active and inactive, because there's this thing called COVID-19 that is wreaking havoc on our sports viewing.
Yeah, it's the most unpredictable thing I've ever seen. I mean, even just looking at some of the initial lines, they're thrown off, but who knows how they could change between now and Sunday. And we haven't even got to look at any of these teams, so kind of feel like we're going in a bit blind here, but let's give it our best shot.
Yeah, no question. And let's start with the defending champs as the Houston Texans go into Kansas City on banner night to give it their best shot. And the public likes them at 52%, but maybe that's because the line is pretty big. It's almost double digits at -9. I think we're going to see a lot of offense. Are we going to see the defending champs start the season with a cover?
I got to be honest, I was pretty surprised that this line was so big. I expected it to maybe be closer to 6 or 6.5, or even 4.5. But to see it at 9 was kind of surprising to me because I think these two teams obviously have a lot of offensive firepower, and I think it's entirely possible that the Texans are able to keep this close. So I think the Chiefs win, but I think a lot of factors. I mean, the lack of home field advantage and the lack of any real practice time game-wise coming into this game will have a big impact. So I'm going to take the Texans. I don't think the Chiefs are going to cover this one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think a lot of this maybe it's just like our offseason hype with these two teams. Mahomes signs his big new deal. We have a lot of love for Kansas City, and they're coming back, and they obviously had a great draft and have an exciting ball carrier. The Texans arguably lost, if not their best, or certainly their second best player. And in Watkins, it was a messy divorce with their head coach. But this may be the only game that David Johnson starts healthy. So there's that. And I do think the Texans still are a pretty good team, despite being, not necessarily as good as I think they were a year ago. So I think 9 points is like that's a bad Miami Dolphins versus Belichick and Brady in his prime line, and I don't think exactly. Two competitive teams. 9 is too many points, so I'm going to go with the dog.
Especially after they spotted them 24 points in that playoff game. Like it wasn't that long ago that we thought the Chiefs were out at the hands of the Texans. So yeah, 9's a big one.
Yeah, and that is the last memory that the entire Texans building has of their season. That's what they were thinking of all off seasons. So I don't think that they're going to get spanked going into Kansas City. The aforementioned Miami Dolphins, I think a much better and improved team this year against the aforementioned New England Patriots. The line no longer is double digits when those two teams meet up. It's now at a much more respectable 6.5. Is 6.5 too many points for the Pats, given that they're going to look different than they did in years past?
Yeah, not just different, way different. This is probably the team, when we say unpredictable, that I think of immediately because everything's so different in New England now. Not only is Cam Newton replacing Tom Brady, and there are question marks about his, at his best, he's an obvious MVP candidate. But, I mean, I think those years are way behind, and can he stay healthy? But defensively, this was a top defense in the league last year, and they were decimated by free agency and COVID-19 opt-outs. And now we don't even really know what this team is going to look like. So I'm a little surprised, again, that this is as big as it is, considering, like you said, the Dolphins should be a better team than they were last year. I think these teams are probably closer than a lot of people traditionally think they would be. So I'm going to take the Dolphins. I like this to be a close game until I have more confidence in the Patriots being a dominant team under Bill Belichick. I'm going to lean the opposition here on, somewhat big spreads.
Yeah, let's not forget the Dolphins gave the Patriots problems last year.
Yeah.
a really good Patriots team and a Dolphins team that we thought was tanking. You have a lot of former Patriots on that Dolphins coaching staff, so there's familiarity there. And in terms of teams that are looking different, I mean, arguably no team looks more different from a positive standpoint than the Dolphins, who had a good draft, but also were very aggressive in free agency. And so I do actually like the Dolphins to cover. I wouldn't be surprised, to be quite frank, the Dolphins win outright. But I think at 6.5, I'm very comfortable picking the underdog in that game. And let's stay actually in the division with the AFC West. Another 1:00 matchup is the Buffalo Bills, and Bills fans love to fade me in this segment, so it'll probably be the same as well. As I've never been able to get my Bills picks correct. They are the favorites. The line is the same at 6.5. Apparently, a lot of people like the Bills at that number. 71% of the public going with Buffalo over the New York Jets. They host them in Buffalo. Actually, the number that really jumps out to me is the over-under in this is 40, which to me is pretty low. I know, obviously, the Bills' defense is pretty good, but the Bills' defense might score against Sam Darnold. Two fun, backfields. I do think they're going to get over that number. But in terms of the line, 6.5, do you think the Bills cover that spread?
I think this is the first spread that makes sense for me, because the gap between these two teams is pretty big. And you mentioned the over-under being at 40. I think the Bills can put up 30 on their own, because this Jets defense, without CJ Mosley for the second year in a row after he opted out, and then trading Jamal Adams, a deal that I think will end up working out for them in the future, but right now looks like it's going to be devastating for that defense. I think the Bills have the capability to blow the Jets out in this game, and I think they'll cover by a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, you look at I mentioned the two backfields. And the reports out of Jets camp is that a back that the Bills didn't really want is looking really, really good and is getting some share in terms of the backfield. So I actually think what you're looking at is by far is too strong, but yeah, by far the worst team in the division is the Jets. And what I think is going to be the best team in the division, which is the Bills. And so when I look at it through that lens, and you got Buffalo at home starting the season, 6.5 is very comfortable. I would have been comfortable at 7 or even 7.5. So I'm in on Buffalo.
So they're going to lose.
Right, yeah, exactly. So they're going to lose. They're going to lose. Another line that surprised me, because you did mention that was the first line that made sense to you, is the next one. Seattle, I know going on the road, but I mean, we're not really sure how much that's going to matter in empty stadiums that all have the same configurations, right? It's not like baseball where, you've got a park that plays better for hitters or pitchers. You play on the same field. And so they're either empty or they have small crowds for however long that lasts. But Seattle going to an empty dome in Atlanta is -2 the favorite. I get it, they're on the road, but again, what does that mean? That's not a lot of points, given the fact that Seattle for the last little while has been one of the class teams in the NFC, and the Falcons, since going to the Super Bowl, certainly have not.
Yeah, and maybe it's the Seahawks travel thing. Seahawks on the East Coast haven't been great historically, but I think that was the opposite case last year. I think they kind of got rid of that stereotype. But yeah, I mean, this Falcons team is kind of interesting to me, because you look at the offense and they have the weapons, right? Todd Gurley, if he is able to find something, there's a little bit of hype out of camp coming that he seems healthier than he's been in a couple years. And Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and an offensive line that could put it together, I could see how this team could be competitive this year. But I like the Seahawks. I like the Seahawks to make a playoff run. I think they're the best team in the NFC West. So I'm going to take the Seahawks, but the small line makes me wonder, what is going on in this game? Is this Falcons team maybe better than we expect? But I'm going to take the Seahawks just because I trust them a bit more.
Yeah, I'm taking the Seahawks, and I'm real comfortable with it. I've heard the Gurley hype. I've heard the news, but I also heard a bunch of hype last year that he was rested and he's back to his former self, and he was still on a pitch count, and he still had meniscus issues in his knees, which is not good for a running back. So I just don't think because he's in a different city that those issues all of a sudden go away. Where I think one of the backs that we probably don't talk enough about is Chris Carson in Seattle. And so I do like Seattle in this matchup. And if Seattle is going to keep pace and challenge in the NFC, as you mentioned, this is a game that they're going to have early in the year, because the NFC West is going to be really, really tough this year. And we'll explore that a little bit with some of the later matchups. NFC East was the opposite of tough last year. It was somewhat soft. And your Philadelphia Eagles, looking to defend their crown in the division, they take on the Washington football team. As the Washington football team is +6. They're underdogs by 6 at home to start the year. Do you feel comfortable with your Philadelphia Eagles covering that line?
Comfortable is not the word I would use, just because I'm always uncomfortable about this season opener and this specific game in general, because last year they went down big before Deshaun Jackson saved them with a couple of big touchdowns. But that being said, I'm not going to overthink this one too much. I think Washington is going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. They just don't have the talent, and it could be one of those teams, if it doesn't work out for Haskins, where they're looking for a new quarterback next year, and it kind of has bad season written all over it. So the Eagles are winners of 6 in a row against Washington, including 2 of the last 3 home openers. So I'm just going to not overthink this and take the Eagles and just hope that a better team, or a team we expect should be better, takes care of business on the opening day.
Yeah, listen, I'm looking for a reason to not go with the Eagles as a Cowboys fan. And once again, it seems like they've been decimated with injuries already.
Yeah, the offensive line is tough. It's tough. They've lost two offensive linemen already.
Right, which is it's either Carson Wentz's health himself, or the health of his receivers, or the health of his offensive line, or all of them together. It seems like that training table can never get a break in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I do think Washington is going to be actually pretty good getting after the passer this year. That will be one of their strengths. So
for sure,
certainly that'll be an issue, but I don't think it'll be an issue enough for it to be a close football game. If this was potentially the Giants or the Cowboys, maybe, but in this division, homecoming will be Washington, even when you're going there. And that's why I do think the Eagles will cover. For me, actually, and I'll make the point on this that will be a through line throughout the picks. Normally, early in the year, I tend to give love to new coaches and new situations. We're giving, that organization some energy and a boost, but also from a systems perspective, you may need a couple games on tape for opponents to really understand and scout what they're going to be doing. There's some value in that. But this is the opposite. And you actually said this well in our preview show. This year, above anything, continuity is king. Without OTAs, without a real preseason, you do think that teams with some built-in understanding are going to have a leg up, specifically early. And so take that into consideration when you're looking at lines, evaluating teams. And Philadelphia 100%. Certainly would be one of those teams, and that's why I like the Eagles in this matchup. Green Bay and Minnesota. Minnesota will have a new play caller offensively, so certainly that's something to weigh. The Packers are dogs going to Minnesota, 2.5 points. Again, for me this year, I'm really, unless it's a crazy cross-country trip, I'm throwing out home road in terms of adding or subtracting values to lines. It's in division, so it's not really a trip. I think these two teams are going to fight for the division, so really it's just a question mark of who do you like more right now in the NFC. And I'm actually pretty torn. Where are you going when it comes to the Packers or the Vikings?
Yeah, I'm torn on this too. I think these teams are also really close, and I like what the Vikings can do on offense with that play action game. I think that's really effective. A big question mark is how will Justin Jefferson do immediately in replacing Stephon Diggs? I think that's a huge question that needs to be answered, but I think the offense is going to be good, and I think the defense, now that they've added Yannick Ngakoue, kind of has a step up here. But I'm going to go against what I initially thought I was going to do, and I'm going to take the Packers here. I think I was unsure of the way in which they did things last year, but I like their defense a lot, and I think that's going to be the difference maker here. I think they're going to get after Kirk Cousins a little bit, and so I'm going to take the Packers, which was not my original thought here, but now that I'm thinking about it, that's the way I'm going to go.
I'm actually going to go Vikings, and I could see this going either way, and the public is split on it, 50-50 in terms of where they're laying their money. I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a bounce back, F the world season if you think you're going to replace me with a first round draft pick. But I do like the fact that Cook, looks like things are harmonious, even though he obviously wants a big payday. Them bringing in Ngakoue to me was a signal that they know that like this is their window. They're all in and they're going for it. They're going to try and win it this year. Do I think any NFC North team is good enough to challenge the teams at the top of the South or the teams at the top of the West? I don't think so. I think we saw that in the playoffs when the Packers realized that they were not maybe as good as their record showed. And I do think there's probably going to be regression in terms of the fact that the Packers were 8-1 and one-score games. I think that probably comes back to the mean a little bit. So I do like Minnesota probably to challenge to win the division, but I do like them at home to start. The Colts and Jags, again, another divisional matchup to start the year. I think for me, kind of two franchises trying to go in different directions. The Colts are -8 favorites, again, on the road. Is that too many points for Phillip Rivers' new team?
I don't think so. I think the Jags, like Washington, are going to be another one of those really bad teams. When you look at them on paper, and that's really all we have at this point, the talent just isn't there. They're literally getting rid of all their good players because those guys don't want to be there, and they've got their eye on the future. And like every other year under Frank Reich, I really like these Colts, and I think Phillip Rivers has enough to make a difference. I think that the relationship between Reich and Rivers, with a good offensive line and some revamped weapons, will make the Colts way more ready for this game than the Jags are going to be. And although the spread is a bit large, I just can't pick the Jags. It's like one of those teams that until they show me anything, I'm probably going to go the other way.
Yeah, the spread's pretty big, and it's moving. It's opened at 7. It's now at 8. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get to kickoff, it's another half point or point. So get it now while you can. And I do like the Colts at this number. And I would have been comfortable, if it was a point higher. So I'm going to go with the Colts in that matchup. Bears and Lions. These two teams, their off seasons kind of confuse me. I don't know a nicer way to say that. The Lions are favored at home at Ford Field by 3 points. The Bears certainly have the better roster, but the Lions, no matter who the Bears decide to start at quarterback, have the better quarterback, and Stafford is back. And so I'm trying to remember how I felt about the Lions before Stafford got injured and they were just a mess down the stretch. And so I 3 points when I think both teams are a toss-up. Part of me wants to take the points, but I'm just not confident with what Matt Nagy's going to do at the quarterback position. So I'm actually going to go with the Lions, but this is a choice for me that I could be sitting around at like 1:30 Eastern with the score 14-0 Bears, and I'm like, why did I try and outthink this? So talk to me. Am I outthinking it?
No, because I've done the same thing. I honestly have done the same thing, and I'm doing the same thing right now as I look at this game. This is one of the the closer ones. And these teams, to me, like you have said, are a mystery. The Bears, like, why are you paying Nick Foles and then you just end up going with Trubisky anyway? I really don't understand that decision. And there's been a little bit of online hype about the Lions. Stafford was playing really well last year before he got injured, and they do have a lot of weapons. But bringing in Adrian Peterson was really confusing for me when they have Kerryon Johnson and they drafted DeAndre Swift. And now it's just these three guys. So I'm really confused about that. And then when I did a little bit of research reminding me what went wrong with the 2019 Lions, they gave up a ton of yards in the passing game. And yes, they added Okudah, but they also got rid of Darius Slay. So I don't know what kind of a difference there's going to be there. And I think the continuity with the Bears is going to be enough for me to reluctantly take them here. I think that might be the difference maker here, whereas the Lions might still try and find out who they are. But again, it could be 130 and the Lions are up 14-0. And I was like, of course. So, I think we're in the same boat, ironically.
Yeah. The next game is probably the one with the most fantasy players in it. So if you are watching your lineup and need one game to focus on, this might be it. 1 o'clock, Baltimore hosting the Cleveland Browns. 49 is the over-under. I think that there's going to be more points than that. The Baltimore's 7.5 are favored over the Browns. I can't even say is that too many points, because when Baltimore beats teams, they tend to destroy them. But I could see more of a controlled possession game, given that Stefanski is now running things for the Browns, and they've got two talented runners for the entire year in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I actually like the Browns to cover for that very fact. I think it's going to be a ground and pound game between the two. What do you see happening in this one?
Yeah, the big spread gives me pause. I think the Ravens are going to win this game, but I think the explosiveness of the Ravens that we saw last year, especially in the middle of the year, is just not going to be there yet. It wasn't at the beginning of last year, and it wasn't at the end of the year, and I think it's just going to take some time. I think eventually we'll see that from the Ravens, but I don't think it's going to happen immediately. And I agree with what you said. I think under Stefanski, we're going to see the Browns run the ball a lot more. They're going to depend a lot more on play action, and I think they're going to try and control the ball. So 7.5 makes me a little bit weary, just because I think this will be a game in which they're feeling each other out a lot. And I don't know that the Ravens are going to be as explosive as they will be, say, in 4 weeks.
An offense, I think, is actually going to be somewhat explosive if Derek Carr can just, get his completion percentage up. And that's the Las Vegas Raiders. They already have a talented back in Jacobs. They had Ruggs, a talented receiver. They've got one of the young up-and-coming tight ends in the game in Waller. They go to Carolina, and the line is just 3 points. I think that's actually a little low. I like the Raiders in this matchup. To you?
This is the game that I probably struggled with the most, and there are a lot on this list, but this one, I don't know about the Raiders. They look to have shown some progress last year, but then got blown out a couple of times in the last 5 weeks and outscored by a ridiculous margin. And I'm just not confident that they improved enough defensively to make that happen. I think under Matt Rule, the Panthers are going to be a rebuilding team for sure, but I think they also have the offensive capability to beat some teams we don't expect. And so I'm going to take the Panthers here, and I think they're going to beat the Raiders in one of the upset surprise wins of week 1.
Interesting. Chargers going to the Bengals, a matchup of two, highly touted rookie QBs. One will be playing in Joe Burrow with the Bengals. The other will not, as Tyrod Taylor will be shepherding the Chargers to start, as Justin Herbert will hold a clipboard and start his career that way. The Bengals are actually home dogs by 3 points. Do you like the Chargers as a road favorite?
There wasn't an injury this year that I was more devastated by than Derwin James, and that's coming from an Eagles fan that's seen every single Eagle get injured this offseason. But I think that changes so much of what the Chargers are, obviously on defense. It just changes their defense entirely, and I think that's going to have a big factor. That said, I'm really skeptical about Joe Burrow week one. It's just he's been given an impossible task of coming into this team and taking over and basically getting no game time to then come up against a team with high expectations with the Chargers. So I'm going to take the Chargers here. I think eventually we'll see the real Joe Burrow, but it's going to take some time. So give me Anthony Lynn and the well-coached Chargers in, a relatively small line.
See, I actually like the Bengals. I do think Burrow, is benefited by the fact that he's got some pretty talented skill position players.
He does, yeah.
AJ Green back, so assuming he's healthy, that's a number one wide receiver. Joe Mixon gets a new deal, so he'll be happy, and he's one of the talented runners in the league. And so these are two teams that, drafted quarterbacks for a reason, because they were pretty bad last year and they were able to get them in the draft. Obviously, the Bengals were the worst team in the league, but the Bengals were trying to be bad. The Chargers weren't necessarily. They just were. And they haven't really done that much to rectify it in the offseason. In fact, their quarterback is gone. And, he didn't start the year, obviously, for them, but, one of their talented runners, Melvin Gordon, is also gone. So I do love Eckler. I love him in fantasy, but I think that the Bengals are better at the skill position spots. And I do think that they might win the game outright, never mind giving them 3 points. And so that's why I like Cincy in that spot.
Tyrod's big playmaking ability is obviously not one of his strengths. And so we could, remember back to when he was in Cleveland and was basically, couldn't make a play and was taken off in the second half, and then Baker Mayfield came on. So I could definitely see that being a struggle for the Chargers. I just don't know if it's going to be immediately.
Yeah, well, the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of quarterback play is the next matchup, the feature matchup in the 4:00 window, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. That's going to take a while.
Still bizarre,
saying that. Very goes to New Orleans to face off against Drew Brees. The Saints at home are 3.5 point favorites, and again, these are two teams that we expect to be right there in terms of winning the division. Do you like the new look Bucs in their first game?
I've been really reluctant to like the new look Bucs, and mostly it comes down to the teams that win the off season rarely actually win anything
in the regular season.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how many times do we talk about winning the off season and then that team misses the playoffs? But I think this is a bit different. There are obvious X factors with the Bucs, Tom Brady and his leadership being one of them. Bruce Arians is obviously a big factor in that as well. And so I think, the Bucs are going to come around and they're going to be a team that will be in the playoffs at the end of the year. But again, continuity and, the fact that the Saints have the deepest and probably the best roster in the NFL right now lends me to believe that they're going to be the team that doesn't have growing pains. Whereas I could see Brady having some growing pains in that offense. And also the Bucs gave up the third most points in the NFL last year. So that's still a concern that I don't know has been rectified yet. So I'm going to take the Saints. And until I see more from the Bucs or anything from the Bucs, then I'm going to continue to be a bit weary.
Yeah, as I said before, the theme for me, specifically early in the year, continuity is king. There's much more, obviously, with New Orleans. And the new guys that they brought in, someone like Emmanuel Sanders, a veteran, someone who gets it, who pick up Sean Payton's offense quite quickly. Everything is new for Tom Brady. New teammates, new offense, new coach, new team, new division. And so certainly I do think there's going to be an adjustment period there. When people are saying, the Bucs could get to a point where they're an elite team in the NFC, they're winning double-digit games, and they're challenging for a Super Bowl. yeah, that would be getting to the point that the New Orleans Saints are at right now, right?
Right.
So you're hoping their ceiling is where the Saints have proven to be. And so especially early in the year, I'll take the Saints. For a team that, was looking to still make deals in training camp, even though they're up against the cap more than really anyone in the NFL. They're trying to buy great players on a credit card because they know that this is their window.
Yeah,
Not
they're
sure
all
how
in
much
on Breeze winning again, right? That's what this
they
is.
have to be.
Yeah,
because they don't know if he's going to be back for another year, and they don't know if the two guys backing him up can be starters in the NFL at a high level. And so certainly I think I'm in on the Saints and Sean Payton this year, even though it's a tough test to start with the Buccaneers. So two teams in the AFC West, as we've got another divisional matchup that I think kind of mirror each other in a weird way. The Cardinals go to San Fran, and I say mirror each other in a way that if we were having this conversation a year ago, maybe we should have seen the writing on the wall with the Niners and how quickly they became a juggernaut and were just a force to be reckoned with. And really, it took a while for me to kind of believe that it was real and it wasn't fool's gold. And so I had a lot of losses on the Niners throughout the year. And I could see the Cardinals being a candidate to take a similar jump. Second year in the offense for Kyler Murray. We've seen second-year quarterbacks really explode. Look at Lamar Jackson. Look at Pat Mahomes. He could be that guy this year in an offense. He gets Hopkins as his weapon. Drake is there for the full year in the backfield. So am I going to predict that Cardinals are going to go to or win the Super Bowl? No. But I think, like the Niners, they could take a huge step. The test is for the Niners in week 1, -7. I'm actually going to go with the Cardinals only because last year, even though the win-loss record wasn't great, they played teams close. And so I do think giving them a jump this year in the fact that they play teams real close and they were a frisky team. I like the Cardinals up against the NFC champs from a year ago. Where are you going in this one?
Yeah, I'm the same way, to be honest, and it's for a couple of reasons. I think the Cardinals are going to take a step. I think the defensive secondary might struggle for the Cardinals, but I don't think that's going to be an issue against Garoppolo and what is a really injured wide receiving core for the Niners right now. And the other reason is I think there's probably going to be a bit of regression in this Niners team. I think they're good. The defense is really good. And, they have an awesome offensive line, and I think they should be able to run the ball super effectively. But I have questions about Garoppolo, and when he doesn't have guys like Deebo Samuel around him to help, what kind of effectiveness will they have in the pass game? And last year the Cardinals played the 49ers super close. One was just a 3-point win for the Niners, and the other one was a 10-point win. And I think the Cardinals have taken a step. So for now, I'm going to say that they're able to keep it close. These in-division games, especially in the NFC West, are always close. So I don't like the big spreads in the NFC West.
We got a small spread with a team that's in the NFC West. Dallas, 3-point favorite on the road in LA against the Rams. That is the 8:20 Sunday night game. Again, I'm just going to fall back on the same things. In terms of continuity, you got a new coach in Mike McCarthy. Sean McVay, the shine was a little bit off of Sean McVay a year ago. He's had an entire offseason and really a pandemic to be at home drawing up some expansive offensive plays to get Jared Goff in some good favorable matchups. And I just look at these two teams and look at their defensive lines. And you have, if you were basically to build the defensive line almost in a lab of how you'd want it to complement each other and tie in with the back end of your defense, that you would be well if you went with Donald and the Rams. The Cowboys, on the other hand, they basically just bought a defensive line on Amazon. They're just like, oh, this looks nice, going to throw it in the cart. Oh, this looks nice, we're going to throw it in the cart. But do they complement each other? Not really. And so that's why I am taking the points in the Rams at home. You're giving me 3 points with the Rams, who again, like, last year was probably an aberration. They're gonna be a better football team if they get some production from the running back spot. Yeah, I like the Rams as a home dog to start the year.
I am a little surprised that you're doing that, but also I shouldn't be. I should know you better than that at this point. Your skepticism about the Cowboys, is shining through, despite them having an amazing offensive roster. But so I think for me, it's that offensive roster that the Cowboys have. I think that the defense, sure, it might take some time to get there, but I think the offense is going to click immediately. And there is some continuity with the Cowboys on offense, and that's Kellen Moore calling the plays. I think that's a big difference. They're way more aggressive when he's doing that, and now your boy Jason Garrett is out. So I think they're gonna, kind of be super aggressive. And while I think the Rams are a really good team for a bounce back year because of all the reasons you stated, I'm gonna take the Cowboys in the Sunday nighter.
Well, you mentioned Jason Garrett in a very slanderous way. He is not my boy, far from it. But he will be in the next matchup. As he's on staff of Joe Judge and the New York Giants as they host Pittsburgh. They're 6-point underdogs to Pittsburgh with again, based on reports, a healthy Ben Roethlisberger who doesn't have pain in his elbow for the first time in modern day football. Do you believe that the Steelers, an 8-8 team from a year ago, are good enough to be 6-point favorites over the Giants?
Of all the teams that I left out of my AFC playoff predictions, the Steelers is the one I regret the most, because I think they're going to bring back another dominant defense. Like, I think maybe that I forgot how good that defense was and how much it carried them for points with Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph. And so I think just putting in a capable quarterback, and now they have Juju Smith-Schuster as well back, I think that makes all the difference. And while I think the Giants have some really interesting weapons on the offensive side, I think Daniel Jones has, some positive attributes, and I think Saquon Barkley is obviously a dominant running back. Their defense is not that. I don't think they have many difference makers on that side of the ball. So I think the Steelers do win this by 5 or 6, or it could be double digits. I think the Giants are going to struggle for a bit.
Yeah, you got Minkah Fitzpatrick for the entire year. That defense, again, takes another step. And, in no uncertain terms, they had the worst offense in the league after Ben Roethlisberger was hurt.
It was tough to watch.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the Roethlisberger injury. James Conner also being banged up last year, hurt in a big way. So now I think we'll probably put a little bit more respect on the Steelers' name, and we'll remember, they were a perennial playoff team in the AFC, and probably will get close to that spot, if not be back in the playoffs once again. Although I do think that division will be hotly contested.
Yeah, they beat each other up a lot too. That's a tough division.
Yes, yeah. Tennessee in the late night game on Monday night, the 10:10 p.m. matchup, Tennessee goes to Denver. No disrespect to Ryan Tannehill. I don't know if I'll be staying up for this one, but I do care about the
thriller. You're gonna miss the thriller.
Yeah, no, not sure.
The classic 10-10 kickoff.
Yeah, not sure. I got this one in me. Sorry, Derrick Henry, but the Titans are actually not favored in this game. It's a pick 'em, which I found very, very surprising. I think by far the Titans are the better team, so makes sense of this line for me.
I think it's tough. Mile High, that's a difference maker. If any team is going to have home field advantage without fans, it's going to be the Broncos.
That's a good point.
I also am going to take the Broncos here. So my reasoning is twofold. I think there is going to be some regression in the Titans. I think they're a good team. I think Mike Vrabel's going to coach them well defensively, but I'm skeptical about whether or not Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry can do the things that they did last year again. It's just they did everything so well, and they were still a 9-7 team. I mean, a lot of that had to do with Tannehill coming in later, but I still just want to see if they're able to play at that level continuously, or if there'll be a regression to the mean, which could be a playoff team as well. But I just don't think they're going to be as dominant as what we saw at the end of the year last year. And I also picked the Broncos to go into the playoffs over these Titans in our prediction show. And I'm going to stay loyal to those picks. So I'm going to take the Broncos in that classic 10-10 kickoff game.
Yeah, I mean, I could not disagree more. So I'll be taking the Titans. So I take solace in the fact that, listen, if you are better than me in every other pick by one, at least I know we'll tie, because I'm very confident that the Titans will.
I will not forget win when the Broncos win.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure Titans fans right now are saying, "Shut the hell up." Which brings me to our survivor pick. Which we've actually been pretty strong at over the last couple of years. Always tough week one, but you also don't want to be the guy who pays $20, $50, $100 and then is out after 1 week. So you want to go safe. Your survivor pick for week one is what?
I think, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with the Colts. I think that is the safest bet. I think you're right. You don't take any chances week one. Don't try and get cute. And I think it's essential in this season, more so than any other season, that you kind of take the home run. You don't try and get cute. So I'm going to take the Colts. I think they beat a way worse Jags team.
Yeah, so I was of similar minds. I thought I'm just going to basically ride the Jags schedule and try and pick whoever they're playing for as long as possible. The other team that I have in that mix would be the Jets. And so certainly if you want to pick the Bills at some point, why not against the Jets? And if you've got two opportunities, why not when the Bills are at home? So I'm taking the Bills. Again, the spread could have been bigger. It's only 6.5, but I'm confident Buffalo is going to win that game. And so that is my survivor pick. Nice. So we'll see. Listen, like most things at the beginning of the year, everyone loves their fantasy team. Everyone loves their current team. Every coach is talking about how great their team is practicing and how the ones are making the ones better. Everyone's undefeated at this point. That includes covers and betting as well. We'll be back in a week to either brag or commiserate on how poorly we did. But in the interim, let us know how we did. Make sure you like, favorite, share this video. Let us know in the comments and on Twitter. We do this for you, so we want it to be interactive. But most importantly, enjoy the games on Sunday. Thanks for this, Gilo.
Thanks, Donnovan.